can't be back here. This area is for medical staff only.
I am medical staff.
I need to see some identification.
You need to see my ID to believe I work here?
Yes, like everyone does.
Interesting. I've watched you let 4 people pass through this hallway in the last 2 minutes. None of them were wearing visible ID badges. You didn't stop any.
All right, today we're diving into something pretty incredible. It's a case study, a real masterclass in how just one person can take on a broken system and actually win. And this isn't just some story, you know? It's a playbook, a step-by-step guide for turning one bad moment into real lasting change. And this right here, this quote is the key to the whole thing. From the absolute get-go, this was never about just an emotional reaction. Nope, it was about strategy. It was about building a case. It's an incredible lesson in how to respond when something goes wrong. So here's our game plan. We'll start with the confrontation that kicked it all off. Then we'll see how it went from a single incident to a data-driven case. We'll look at the smart way power was used, check out the ripple effect of the consequences, and then we'll wrap it all up with a 5-step playbook you can actually learn from.
Okay, let's get into it. The whole story kicks off in a place you'd never expect this kind of high-stakes drama to unfold: a hospital hallway.
So try to picture this, right? You've got Alicia, who's not just any doctor. She's the hospital's chief medical officer. She's just come out of a procedure, so she's wearing bloody scrubs. You know the kind you wear when you've just been saving someone's life? She's walking through a restricted area, a place she absolutely has a right to be. And then bam, a security guard, Blake, stops her. He demands to know what she's doing there. He has no idea he's talking to the most senior doctor in the entire building. I mean, the irony here, it's just off the charts.
Okay, and this is where everything changes. This is the crucial moment. You see, Alicia could have just gotten angry, right? Filed a complaint, made a scene, but she didn't. Instead, she did something incredibly smart. She shifted her thinking from, "I've been insulted," to asking a much, much bigger question. Was this just a one-time thing, or is this a symptom of a much deeper problem here?
And that led to her core strategy, which is brilliant: pattern over incident. Look, she knew that one story, her story, could easily be brushed aside. Oh, it was a misunderstanding, they'd say. But a pattern that's backed up by cold, hard numbers, well, that's a whole different ballgame. You just can't ignore that. So she went after the data, and she got it. The hospital looked into Blake, the guard. Turns out, in just the last 3 weeks, he'd stopped 12 people and demanded their ID. Now, you might think, okay, 12 people, maybe he's just being thorough, doing his job. But wait, the devil is always in the details. The real story is who he was stopping. So of those 12 people he stopped, get this, 11 of them were people of color. Only 1 was white. And just like that, boom, the pattern becomes crystal clear. This wasn't about security protocols. This was about one person's bias playing out in their job. But Alicia wasn't done, not even close. She realized this might be bigger than just one guard. So she pushed for more data, this time on all security stops for the entire past year. And what she found was shocking. Black and Latino staff were getting stopped 3 times more often than their white colleagues. So you see, it wasn't just one bad apple. The entire system was failing.
Okay, so now she's got the data, it's undeniable, she's got her proof, and this is where she shifts gears again. She's not just a person who was wronged anymore. She's the chief medical officer, and she's about to use the power of that position like a scalpel. What's her next move? She calls a meeting. But this isn't just some run-of-the-mill chat with HR, no way. She gets everyone who matters in the room: the CEO, the chair of the board, the head of HR, and this is the masterstroke, the regional manager for the security company. She didn't waste time with middlemen. She went straight to the top, to the people who could actually make a decision.
And when she got them in that room, she didn't ask for anything. She gave them an ultimatum. She looked at the security contractor and laid out 2 very clear paths. Path number 1, you completely revamp your training, you put every single guard through bias training, and you agree to regular audits. Or path number 2, you lose our multi-million-dollar contract. Right now. It was brilliant because she turned a social issue into a bottom-line business decision. And that's a language everyone understands.
But believe it or not, the story doesn't even end there. That one meeting started a chain reaction, a kind of accountability ripple effect that was about to spread out and touch everyone involved.
So even after the security company caved and agreed to her demands, Alicia made another huge move. She filed a formal EEOC complaint. But here's the thing. It wasn't against the guard or even the security company. It was against the hospital. Her logic was flawless. At the end of the day, the hospital is responsible for the environment it fosters and the people it hires to work there.
And that complaint? It resulted in a number that made the board sit up and pay attention. $850,000. That was the settlement the hospital paid Alicia to make it all go away and avoid a messy public lawsuit. And it sent a message, loud and clear. Letting this stuff happen will cost you, big time.
So let's look at the aftermath. The fallout was huge. Alicia, she took that settlement money and started a scholarship fund. The hospital, they completely overhauled their policies. The security company, they ended up losing so many contracts, they went out of business. But the real kicker, the most important outcome of all, over the next few years, discrimination complaints at that hospital dropped by 60%. 60! That right there is real measurable change.
So, wow, what an incredible story. The big question is, what can we all take away from this? That brings us to the final piece of this puzzle, the systemic change playbook. We've boiled Alicia's entire strategy down into 5 key lessons that anyone can understand.
All right, here it is, the playbook. Number 1, documentation is everything. Number 2, patterns always beat incidents. 3, know where your power is and use it smartly. 4, money talks. Financial consequences are what really drive change. And finally, number 5, pay it forward and create opportunities for others. Let's start with lesson 1. Document everything. I mean, everything. Alicia's paper trail, every email, every fact, every request for data, that was the rock-solid foundation of her whole case. Think about it. Without that documentation, it's just your word against theirs. But with it, you have a record that no one can deny.
Lesson 2 is that core idea we talked about. Patterns matter more than incidents. It's so important. A single event, a single complaint, is easy to dismiss. But when you use data to show a pattern of bias, you've just transformed your personal issue into proof of a system-wide failure. And a systemic failure needs a systemic solution, not just firing one guy.
Okay, lesson 3, know your power and use it strategically. Now, Alicia had a big title, Chief Medical Officer, and she used it perfectly. But power isn't always about a fancy title, right? It can be your knowledge, your influence, the relationships you've built. The real key here is to use whatever power you have, not to get revenge on one person, but to push for real, lasting change for everyone. Lesson 4 is a little cynical, but it's absolutely crucial. Money talks. Financial consequences are what make institutions move. That $850,000 settlement, that got the board's attention faster than any moral argument ever could have. It's a sad truth, but a truth nonetheless. Big organizations often don't change their ways until their inaction starts to hurt their bottom line.
And that brings us to our final lesson. Create opportunities for others. I mean, think about it. Alicia could have just taken her settlement and walked away. Nobody would have blamed her, but she didn't. She took that money and she reinvested it, creating a scholarship fund. She transformed a really awful personal experience into a positive legacy, one that's going to help build a better, more diverse future for others. So that's the story. And it leaves us with a really important question to think about. Looking at everything that happened, from that first moment in the hallway all the way to the final outcome, if that had been you, if you were in Alicia's shoes, what would you have done? It really makes you think about what it takes to not just survive a broken system, but to actually be the one to fix it.
So picture this. It's 6:15 on a Wednesday morning, a simple 12-minute chat in a hospital hallway. But this wasn't just any chat. This one conversation ended a career, it cost the hospital almost $1 million, and it completely rewrote security rules for an entire region. And it all kicked off with a pretty routine challenge. Those are the words, spoken by a security guard to a woman he sees in bloody scrubs. You know, on the surface, it sounds like he's just doing his job, right? Enforcing the rules. But what he didn't get, what he couldn't possibly have known, was that he was in the middle of making the single worst decision of his entire professional life.
So let's set the scene. We're in a hallway near the ICU at St. Catherine's. Our security guard, Blake Mercer, spots a black woman in scrubs, and he decides she doesn't belong there, in a restricted area. And this, right here, is where our story really begins.
Okay, so you can feel the tension right away. She says, I am medical staff, simple fact.
But his demand for ID is met with a question that just cuts right to the chase. You need to see my ID to believe I work here? She's not just asking about an ID card, she's challenging the whole reason he stopped her in the first place. That question, that's the spark.
And here it is. This is the real heart of the problem. See, Dr. Hammond wasn't actually mad about being asked for her ID. She was mad about this selective enforcement. She literally just watched 4 other people, all in scrubs, walk right by this guard. None of them had their ID visible, and he didn't say a word to any of them. So the policy, it seems, was only for her.
So, to really get why this thing escalated so fast and so dramatically, we have to pull the camera back for a second and look at who these 2 people actually were. Because the power dynamic in that hallway was, well, not at all what it looked like.
Okay, so the woman in the scrubs, that was Dr. Alicia Hammond. And she wasn't just a doctor. She was a Harvard-trained surgeon, a researcher published in the world's top medical journal. She's the chief medical officer of the entire hospital. She's in charge of 800 physicians. And of all the incredible ironies, she's the one who ultimately signs the paychecks for the hospital staff. And that includes contract security. She was, without a doubt, one of the most powerful people in that entire building.
And her position? It was incredibly rare. At the time, she was one of only 12 Black female chief medical officers at major hospitals in the entire United States. Which means, sadly, that she had spent her whole career having to navigate spaces where people just assumed she didn't belong.
And the person challenging her? Blake Mercer, a security guard who'd been on the job for all of 3 weeks. He'd had almost no training, he'd never even been shown a picture of the hospital's leadership. He was operating completely on his own internal biases about what a doctor is supposed to look like.
I mean, the irony of this whole situation is just staggering when you lay it out. On one side, you have the chief medical officer who's been up since 4:30 in the morning saving lives, totally exhausted, her badge just kind of tucked into her waistband. And on the other side, you've got the new guy, selectively enforcing a rule based on absolutely nothing but his own ascensions.
All right, let's go back to that hallway. Because now that we know who's who, this whole confrontation becomes something else. It's a direct test of authority, and frankly, it's a test that Blake Mercer is about to fail in the most spectacular way possible.
Dr. Hammond, she stays completely calm, and she asks that central question again. What made her different? It's a simple question, but it's one Blake just refuses to answer. And why? Well, because any real answer would expose the bias that made him stop her in the first place.
So, since he can't justify what he did, Blake does what people do when they're cornered. He escalates. He issues a threat. He's trying to use the authority of his uniform to bully her into just dropping it. He wants to make her the problem, not his own bad judgment. And this is the moment the whole situation just flips on its head. Dr. Hammond doesn't even flinch. She's not flustered. She just calmly looks at him and tells him to go ahead. Make the call. Call your backup. Call your supervisor. She knows exactly what's about to happen, even if he has no clue.
And she didn't just hint at what was going on. She called it out. She looked him right in the eye and said he was racially profiling her. She used those exact words, leaving absolutely no room for doubt about what she believed was happening.
And then, almost like it was scripted, a nurse who had worked with Dr. Hammond for years comes around the corner. She sees what's going on, and her jaw just drops. She looks at Blake and says, she's the chief medical officer. She runs this entire hospital. I mean, the security footage is incredible. You can literally see the blood drain from Blake's face. His entire world just fell apart in that 1 second. After that, things move fast, really fast. Dr. Hammond calls the chief of security, who shows up in about 3 minutes. He takes one look at the situation and immediately gets how serious this is. Blake admits he didn't stop anyone else, and just like that, Henderson tells him to go to the security office. The confrontation is over.
But the story is so far from over. In fact, you could say the most important part of this story is the huge ripple effect that started the very moment Blake walked away. The consequences of this 12-minute encounter were just about to get started. I mean, the fallout was immediate, and it was widespread. Within minutes, Blake Mercer's job was gone. Within 48 hours, Dr. Hammond was demanding a top-to-bottom review of all security policies. And within a year, the security protocols at 17 different hospitals were completely changed, all because of this one incident.
And then there's the money. Yeah, the hospital ended up settling a discrimination lawsuit to the tune of $850,000. That is an absolutely insane price to pay for one security guard's terrible assumption.
The changes to the system were just massive. The security company had to completely overhaul its training. That security camera footage, it became required viewing for security companies in 3 states. And brand new rules, including data tracking on who gets stopped, were put in place to make sure this could never, ever happen again.
And you have to understand, for Dr. Hammond, this was never just about her. It wasn't about her being annoyed or inconvenienced. She put up with this kind of stuff her whole career. She saw an opportunity to use her power to make real systemic change, to make sure that no other doctor of color, no nurse, no one on her staff would have to go through that same thing again.
Which, of course, leaves us with one last big thought. This whole thing happened in one hospital, but it just makes you wonder, right? How many other brilliant people, doctors, scientists, artists, leaders, are being stopped in their own hallways, being questioned and made to feel like they don't belong, in the very places where they do their most important work?